The evening Wilder Blackwell climbed the saloon stairs, Melissa Forner felt something shift in the air. She didn't know what it was, only that her heart reacted before her mind did. For 6 years she had lived by strict rules. Her hands could touch men to heal their pain, but no man ever touched her. That boundary kept her safe. That boundary kept her whole. But the moment she heard those slow, steady footsteps on the Silver Spur staircase, something deep inside her whispered that this man would challenge everything she thought she understood about safety. Cripplebend, Colorado sat in a valley narrow as a riverbed, a place where the sun only touched Main Street 4 hours a day. Shadows lived longer than people, gossip traveled faster than horses, and the Silver Spur Saloon stood at the north end like a tired guardian watching over the town. On the second floor, in a small room that smelled of rose soap and pine liniment, Melissa tried to tame her stubborn brown hair in a cracked mirror. She'd been fighting it for years and losing the same battle every morning. The pins she forced into place always slid free by noon, as if her hair refused to belong to anyone, not even her. The room behind her was plain but clean. A narrow bed, a wooden chair with a cushion she'd sewn herself, 3 dresses folded in a trunk. A single embroidered verse her mother had framed before fever took her. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Melissa often wondered if wanting less was the same as not wanting at all. Downstairs, the piano started its nightly song, slightly off-key but determined. Laughter rose from the card tables, mixing with the smell of tobacco smoke and spilled whiskey. Her shift was starting. Melissa worked as the saloon's massage healer, an odd job in a town that pretended not to need comfort. Ranch hands with stiff backs, miners with tight shoulders, travelers worn down by miles of hard trail, they all climbed the stairs asking for relief. And Melissa gave it, her hands trained by an old traveler who'd once passed through town and taught her the art of pressure and muscle reading. Her one rule was famous across 3 counties. She touched others, but no one touched her. Most men respected that line. The foolish ones learned quickly. She had just finished arranging her oils when the footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Slow, deliberate, each step steady as a heartbeat. These weren't the boots of a desperate ranch hand or a nervous merchant. These steps carried confidence, purpose. A man who did not fear the room he was walking into. Below, the piano player stopped mid-song and shouted, "Either a big man or a guilty conscience just came through that door." Laughter rolled through the saloon, but Melissa's pulse jumped. She pressed a hand to her ribs, irritated that her own body was betraying her. A soft, measured knock followed. "Come in," she said, steadying her voice. The door opened. Wilder Blackwell stepped inside like quiet thunder filling the small space. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a build shaped by honest work, not vanity. His coat was dusty from travel but well kept, his boots polished, his shirt clean. His dark hair brushed the edge of his hat, and his eyes, gray-green like creek water just before dawn, took her in with calm respect. Not demand, not hunger, respect. "Evening, ma'am," he said with a gentle southern drawl. "Name's Wilder Blackwell. Heard you're the one who can tame a back that's staging rebellion." Melissa felt a smile tug at her lips. "That depends on what your back did to deserve rebellion." "Tried working a ranch alone for 3 months," he said, pulling off his hat. "Spine's holding a grudge." She motioned to the chair. "Coat off, shirt on, have a seat." He folded his coat with careful precision, smoothing the seams before placing it neatly over the chair. The gesture was so strangely thoughtful that it drew a soft chuckle from her. "You treat that coat better than most men treat their wives." Wilder glanced up with the faintest smile. "Coat doesn't argue back." Melissa blinked at the unexpected warmth in her chest. This was dangerous. Humor was dangerous. Kindness was dangerous. She needed to stay professional, but when she placed her hands on his shoulders, she froze. Heat. Strength. Months of tension gathered like storm clouds beneath his skin. Her breath nearly caught. She had healed hundreds of men. None of them made her hands tremble. "How long have you been doing this work?" Wilder asked, voice low as her thumbs began tracing the tightness in his shoulders. 6 years, Melissa said, relieved her voice remained steady. "Started when I was 18. "You're good at it," he said simply. "I can tell." She cleared her throat. Compliments from men usually felt suspicious, but his tone held no flirtation, just a calm, honest observation. She worked in silence for a moment, reading the story in his muscles the same way she always did. Hard work, steady responsibility, quiet endurance. But something else too. Loneliness pressed deep into the muscle, the way cold settles into bones. "You from around here?" she asked. 8 miles west. Blackwell Creek Ranch. "Never heard of it." "Keep to myself mostly," he said. "Don't come to town unless necessary." What changed? Quote, "My back finally convinced me I needed help." Their conversation softened into quiet rhythm as she worked. His breathing slowed, tension easing beneath her skilled hands. The air in the room warmed with something she didn't recognize, something unfamiliar, unsettling, and impossible to ignore. After 20 minutes, Wilder stood and rolled his shoulders. "That's remarkable," he said with genuine admiration. He placed $2 silver on her table, twice her usual rate. "That's too much." "Rate for good work done well," he said gently. Their eyes met. Something shifted. Something dangerous. Wilder tipped his hat. "If you'll have me, I'll return tomorrow. Same time." Melissa nodded before she could stop herself. After he left, she stared at the silver dollars gleaming under lamplight and pressed a hand to her chest, steadying the fluttering inside her. For the first time in 6 years, the rule that kept her safe felt suddenly, terrifyingly fragile. Tomorrow at 7 felt impossibly far away. Wilder Blackwell returned the next evening at exactly 7. Same slow boots on the staircase. Same 3 gentle knocks. Same quiet confidence that made Melissa's pulse kick the way it hadn't in years. She opened the door before he finished knocking. "Evening," he said softly. "Evening." He removed his coat and folded it with that same careful habit, but this time as he caught her watching him, his smile lingered a little longer. Melissa felt her breath snag and quickly turned away, pretending to adjust the oils on her shelf. This was foolish. He was just another client, a temporary visitor. A man who would leave after his back stopped hurting, but when her hands touched his shoulders, that same warm rush filled her chest. She knew muscle tension well. It told stories, and Wilder's shoulders held not just strain, but the weight of someone who'd shouldered too much alone. Over the next 10 days, he arrived at the same time every evening, always with clean boots, always polite, always paying twice her rate, no matter how much she argued. And with each visit, something unspoken stretched between them. On the 4th night, as she pressed into a knot between his shoulder blades, his stomach growled loud enough to startle them both. Melissa burst out laughing, a sound she hadn't made in months. "I heal muscles, not hunger," she teased. "Next time bring pie." His quiet laugh warmed the room. "You want pie? I'll bring the whole bakery." The next evening he arrived carrying a warm cloth bundle. "Peace offering," he said. Inside was a slice of apple pie from Mrs. Gillespie's bakery. They shared it after the session, sitting across from each other while the setting sun painted soft gold across her walls. Wilder spoke about his ranch, the early morning mist, the cattle moving through the grass, the lonely quiet of the house he'd built with his own hands. Melissa found herself speaking too, more than she ever did with anyone. She told him about her mother's embroidered verse, about learning massage from a traveler who believed every pain had a root deeper than muscle, about how she could read a person's life by the tension they carried. "What does my back tell you?" Wilder asked. Melissa hesitated, then answered softly, "That you've been alone too long." His eyes met hers, warm and steady. That's remarkably accurate. After that, he never came empty-handed. Bread, honey, once a small hand-carved horse for her desk. Downstairs, the talk grew louder. Mrs. Burke swore she saw Wilder brushing Melissa's hand through the upstairs curtain. She hadn't. She'd actually seen a broom leaning against a wall. The bartender Francisco added his own commentary. A man doesn't need that many back rubs unless something else is happening. Most gossip was harmless. Some carried sharper edges. Cassandra Roberson, the wealthy ranch widow who'd made several failed attempts to court Wilder, began appearing in the saloon during evenings, positioned near the stairs. She nodded at him each night with a too-bright smile, but Wilder's polite return held no warmth. Melissa noticed. She noticed everything when it involved Wilder. One evening, her hands hesitated as they moved across his shoulders. "There's talk," she said quietly. "Talk about us." "Let them talk," he replied. "Doesn't bother me." "Doesn't it?" Her voice trembled softly. "The only thing that bothers me," he said, turning his head slightly so he could see her, "is if it bothers you." Melissa stepped back, suddenly needing space. "Why do you keep coming here?" she asked. "You could go anywhere." Wilder slowly turned in the chair to face her fully. "Because every day at 5, I finish my work and realize the only thing I'm looking forward to is 7. Here. With you." His voice softened, deepening with honesty. "Because I've spent 5 years managing my ranch alone and only just figured out I don't want to manage my life the same way. Because you're the first person in a long time who sees me as a man, not land or money." Her breath hitched. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I know enough," he said gently. "I know you fight your hair every morning and never surrender. I know you undercharge for your work because you don't see your own worth. I know you built walls around yourself so high most folks can't see over them." His voice turned quiet, tender. "And I know there's warmth behind those walls that scares you more than anything." Melissa swallowed hard. Loneliness had become a habit she didn't know how to break. She stepped back again. "Mrs. Roberson's been asking about you." Wilder didn't blink. "She's not you." The room went still. Their next sessions became heavier, filled with tension neither fully understood. When their eyes met, something silent passed between them, something neither dared name. On the 10th evening, after another long session, Wilder stood with his coat in his hands. But instead of folding it carefully, he held it loosely, eyes fixed on hers. "Melissa," he began softly, "I'm not good with fancy words, but I need you to understand this." She waited, heart pounding. "I'm not coming here for the massage anymore," he said, voice steady. "Haven't been for a while." He stepped a little closer. "I'm coming because this room, with you in it, is the only place that feels right." Melissa froze. Every wall she'd built, over 6 years, rushed up at once, battling hope and fear. "I don't know what I want," she whispered. "That's honest," he said, "and I respect honesty." He put on his coat, moved to the door, rested his hand on the knob. "I'll be here tomorrow at 7, same as always, unless you tell me not to come." Then he left. Melissa sat on her bed long after he was gone, trembling, overwhelmed by a feeling she had spent years avoiding. Choice was terrifying, and for the first time in her life, choice was staring her in the face. The next day passed slow as winter. At 7, she stood waiting. For what? She wasn't sure. The next evening arrived wrapped in unusual heat for early September, the kind that made shirts cling and the air feel heavy enough to hold worry. Melissa spent the whole afternoon preparing her room, smoothing the sheets, polishing the bottles of liniment, lighting candles even though it wasn't yet dark. She told herself it was routine, habit, professionalism. But her hands shook. At 7 o'clock sharp, Wilder's boots sounded on the stairs. 3 gentle knocks. Melissa opened the door before he lowered his hand. He looked different tonight, not in appearance, but in the way he carried himself. Determined, patient, bracing for something important. "Evening," he said softly. "Evening." He folded his coat. She watched. He watched her watching. Something unsaid flowed between them. Wilder sat in the chair. Melissa moved behind him, hands hovering over his shoulders before lowering gently. The moment her palms met his muscles, he inhaled, a slow, quiet breath that sent a ripple of awareness through her chest. She began working through the familiar lines of tension. But tonight, every movement felt heavier, like the room itself was listening. After several minutes, she found a knot near the base of his neck. When she pressed it carefully, Wilder's breath hitched. "There," he murmured. "That's the spot." She nodded. "It's deep. Might take a while. Take all the time you need." The room felt warm, too warm. Melissa focused on her hands, on the knot, on the steady rise and fall of Wilder's breathing. But her heart was no longer calm. His nearness stirred something she didn't know how to quiet. When the knot finally loosened, Melissa stepped back, unsettled by the strange trembling running through her ribs. Wilder sensed it. He always noticed things she tried to hide. He turned slightly in the chair. "Melissa." She didn't answer. "You're scared," he said gently. She closed her eyes for a moment. "Yes. I meant what I said yesterday," he continued. "I'm not here just for the work you do. I'm here because you're the only person I want to see at the end of the day." Melissa wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't know how to do this, any of it." "That's all right. We do it slow, honest, together." "But people talk," she whispered. "Cassandra Robertson has been telling half the town you and she have an understanding." Wilder let out a quiet breath. "We don't. Never have. She said you promised to consider her offer. I did consider it, long enough to tell her no. She didn't like hearing it, so she made her own version of the truth." His voice stayed calm, but she heard the frustration beneath it. "I'm not tied to her. I'm not tied to anyone." Quote, he looked at her with steady eyes. "Except possibly to you, if you'll let me be." Melissa's heart pressed against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "Why me?" she whispered. "You could have someone wealthy, respected, someone who belongs in your world." "I don't want someone who belongs," he said quietly. "I want someone who fits, and that's you." The words shook her. Wilder stood, careful and slow, as if afraid to startle her. He didn't reach for her. He simply stood close enough that she could feel his presence, his warmth, his sincerity. "Tell me what you need," he said. "I'll follow your pace." Melissa took a shaky breath. "I need time." "Time is yours." A quiet moment passed between them, gentle but powerful. Then Wilder stepped back, picked up his coat, and moved to the door. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then nodded. He tipped his hat and left. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay awake, replaying every word, every look, every shift in his voice. By morning, she felt wrung out, as if she'd lived 10 years in a single night. The days that followed were filled with tension, both between them and inside her. She worked on his back with careful hands. He talked to her in his steady, patient way. They shared slices of pie and moments of laughter. But the unspoken question sat heavy in the air. What were they becoming? 3 days later, everything changed. Wilder didn't arrive at 7, or 7:15, or 7:30. At 8 o'clock, raised voices drifted up from the saloon below. Melissa walked to the stairs and looked down. Cassandra Robertson stood in the middle of the saloon floor, her voice loud and sharp. "Wilder Blackwell and I are practically engaged," she declared. "Everyone knows it. His little visits upstairs are nothing more than passing distraction." Melissa felt her stomach twist. The world swayed. She stumbled back to her room. She tried not to believe Cassandra's words, but her oldest fear rose fast and cruel. "You're foolish to think someone like him would choose you." Her breath shook. Her eyes burned. She began packing her small trunk. Before she could fold her second dress, heavy boots stormed up the stairs. 3 quick knocks. "Melissa," Wilder called, "I know you're in there." She kept silent. "I'm late because the cattle broke a fence. I've been rounding them up since dusk. Please open the door." Her voice cracked. "Go away." "No." His tone softened to something that made her knees weak. "I heard what Cassandra said downstairs. Melissa, she's lying. She's been lying." "How do I know?" "Because I'm here," he said simply, "standing at your door instead of anywhere else. Because I've told her no 3 times. Because I keep choosing you, and I'll keep choosing you unless you tell me not to." Her vision blurred. Slowly, she opened the door. Wilder stood there, dusty, exhausted, shirt torn from ranch work, looking at her like she mattered more than anything in the world. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. I don't know how to do this." "Then let me be scared with you." His voice was quiet, gentle, steady. Melissa stepped back, letting him inside. Wilder took her hands carefully, like something precious. "You don't have to give me an answer tonight," he said. "You don't have to give it tomorrow. But I need you to know what I want." Melissa swallowed. "What do you want?" "You," he said plainly. "Not as a passing visitor, not as a rumor, not as something temporary. I want to build a life with you." Her breath hitched. "I want you at the ranch with me. I want to wake up and know the house isn't empty. I want partnership. I want marriage, Melissa." The word filled the room like sunlight breaking through cloud. "Marriage!" She covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed. Everything inside her trembled. Fear, hope, disbelief. "I know it's fast," Wilder said, "but it's true. And I'd rather be honest than slow." Melissa stepped back, shaking her head. "This is too much." "It's only a question," he said softly, "not a demand." She sank onto the bed. Wilder knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes. "I love you, Melissa Forner. That's the plain truth." Quote, she felt the weight of his words settle into the cracks of her heart like something meant to heal. 3 days passed before she could speak the truth back. When Wilder arrived on the 4th night, she opened the door holding her small trunk. He froze. "Are you leaving?" "No," she said softly. "I'm coming with you." Relief flooded his face, so bright and pure she almost cried. They left Cripplebend at sunrise. Mrs. Burke fainted at her window. Francisco cheered loud enough to wake the mules behind the saloon. And Wilder helped Melissa onto the wagon seat like she was something worth protecting. At the Blackwell ranch, he showed her the house he'd built. 4 bedrooms, a big kitchen, a wraparound porch. A lonely house waiting for footsteps and laughter. Melissa stood in the doorway and felt something settle inside her. Home. 3 days later, with only 2 witnesses and a simple church ceremony, Melissa Forner became Melissa Blackwell. Wilder said, "I do," like a vow he'd been holding for years. Melissa said, "I do," with a trembling voice but a steady heart. Their future stretched before them, uncertain, beautiful, wide as the frontier itself. That night, on the porch of their new home, Wilder held her hand gently and whispered, "We'll figure out everything else together." And for the first time in her adult life, Melissa believed she truly could.